Heidi-ho, neighbors, this is Steve from the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, and you're listening to the NSFWP Halloween Special.
Trick or treat.
Oh, hi there. Aren't you just so precious? What are you supposed to be, Raggedy Ann?
No, actually, Sally from Night Before Christmas.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that particular film myself, but I'm quite sure you look just like her, dear. Would you like a full-size Almond Joy to put in your bag there?
Yes, please.
All right, here you go. Run along now.
Thank you. Sometimes I feel like a nut.
All right, did you get something good?
Yeah, I got an Almond Joy, Dad.
Ooh, sometimes you feel like a nut, right? By the way, your Sally costume looks great. I just want you to know that.
Thanks, Dad.
So, how do you like my Jack costume?
Well, in the first place, I thought you were going to be Jack from Night Before Christmas, not Jack from Titanic.
But I'm on top of the world! Get it? You know, Leonardo DiCaprio, all that.
Yeah,
Big,
I get it,
big sinking
Dad.
ship.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'm getting sick of this Richie Rich neighborhood. You're never going to learn how hard the world really is if you get a full-size candy bar at every stinking stop. Let's head out to the asylum. You know, the old spooky abandoned one? It's open again, and I heard the guard is giving out awesome candy.
Dad, remember last year? That's where they kept Maurice.
That's where they put Maurice?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, I mean, he's not going to bother you again. He's locked up behind bars now. That place hasn't had a breakout since the last time it was open. Totally safe.
Okay, Dad, but we're not going to the old folks' home. I draw the line at that.
All right. Deal. But I just love seeing the looks on their old denture-filled faces. All right, now, it's just right up this hill. And that is a very steep hill. And I got to tell you something, my back teeth are floating. I'm going to have to take a pit stop. Why don't you go ahead and go on up there, knock on the guard's door, get the best candy you can, run on down the hill. I'll catch up with you if I can. I'll be around here somewhere, probably behind a bush. Does that sound like a good plan to you?
You're hopeless, Dad.
Okay, just remember the rules. Don't talk to strangers unless they have candy. I think that's the rule, right?
Fine, let's get this over with. Why does he always have to make me walk up these stupid hills? He doesn't even look anything like Leonardo DiCaprio. What was that? That must be the guardhouse up there. There isn't even lights on. The door is wide open. Hello? Trick or treat. Anybody here? Wait a minute. What's that smell? I know that smell anywhere.
You put me in here, and now it's payback time.
Not this time, Maurice. I finally found a use for this disgusting candy corn. Nose plugs.
No!
Taste these size 10s. Ugh. That'll be the last we smell of him. Well, we shouldn't waste this dead guard's candy.
That's quite a hill. Did I miss anything?
No, not really. Want some candy corn?
Oh, you've been holding out on me. That's my favorite. Give it here.
Here you go.
Mmm, salty. Wait, what is this shit?
Not safe for f***ing worker placement podcast.
I flipped the board. I despise that game. Oh, shit. That sounds like... Oh, wait.
Hello and welcome to the 27th episode of the Not Safe for Worker Placement podcast. A podcast brought to you by me, a breathy, slightly foreign-sounding person who is trying to be scary. Otherwise known as me, Ben. And Leandra is not here for this episode. It's beginning to be a thing around Halloween. It has been a thing for several years that she travels, to China or somewhere across the world. And this year it happens to be
Salem, Massachusetts. She's knocking one off the bucket list with her best friend, Tracy, and they are doing all things Halloween. So it's just me flying solo in this episode. But not to be outdone by my own self last year, where I had two spectacular guests on our Halloween episode, Jamey Stegmaier from Stegmaier Games and Steve from the Secret Cabal, Steve Spang. This year, we have those two guys returning. They had so much fun, they wanted to do it again because I asked them to, and they're nice guys. And I also went out to several other people, and I got a lot of responses, and some people weren't able to get some content in, some people were, and then files corrupted, and all kinds of fun stuff, and then they were gone to Europe. Because the one thing that I always forget about the Halloween episode is that I don't need to record it last minute, and I should probably ask people before a week before the recording, because it turns out there's this big thing called Essen that happens right around this time every single year, and I always forget that, and half the people that I would like to contribute are in Europe at the time and drinking all the good beers that I'd like to be drinking and eating all the disgusting food that I'd rather avoid. So we got a new guest this year, a contributor, Theo the Geekygaymer Guy. I love this dude. He is a new reviewer. He's got a channel on YouTube, and talk about someone who loves being themselves and has high energy in his reviews and high quality, reviews a lot of games that other people don't. I just really like his content. I find myself watching his videos all the time just because of you can see the love that he has for board games and just what a positive person he is. So Theo is going to contribute this episode as well as Jamey and Steve. And what we're going to do in this episode, since I am flying solo, is I asked these contributors to tell me a little bit about scary board games and spooky board games, because what the fuck else are we going to talk about? It's Halloween. And we haven't actually been playing many. We played some Touch of Evil not very long ago, which we already talked about on the podcast. And we really haven't played a lot of what I would call, your straight up horror games lately, because there haven't been a lot of new ones released. So we're going to talk about just people's all-time favorites. And then I'm going to chime in afterwards and tell you a little bit about, like, if you like that, then try this. And I'll give my own little recommendation. And I'm going to try to point out a little thing that I always notice. Whenever I hear about a new game or I get a new game, sometimes I'll sit on the shelf, but what will make me want to play a certain game, sometimes a theme of a game, especially like a horror game or something, is if I consume some other type of media or entertainment that relates to that. And then I'm like, oh, that makes me want to play such and such game, right? So that happens all the time to me. Or vice versa. I'll play a game and it'll make me want to watch a certain movie or read a certain book. So I'm going to try to tie in another piece of entertainment media to each of these games that our contributors talk about. And maybe that'll get you in the mood to check out some other thing whenever you can't be sitting around a table with other people. You can get the juices going for that theme and then continue it on into other realms. I always find that to be fun. So let's do this damn thing. Let's start it out with what our friend Steve Spang from the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast is best known for. His razor sharp wit. That's a pre-laugh. Because after Steve tells jokes, you normally don't do a post-laugh.
How do you fix a broken jack-o'-lantern? With a pumpkin patch. My mother always told me the fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach. She was a great woman, but a terrible surgeon.
All right. Thanks, Steve. If they weren't already dead, you'd be killing them. All right. We'll hear more from Steve a little bit later in the episode. So stitch those sides back up or take the stitches out of them or whatever that is. I don't know what stitches mean. I guess it means like you bust a gut laughing, but probably the fact that I'm explaining it to you right now would take away any humor that was there. So anyway, let's talk to one of our contributors besides Steve, because Steve's more like talking at us, or as Steve calls it, telling jokes. All right, so let's hear from Jamey Stegmaier of Stegmaier Games, one of our favorite returning guests. He's been on the show several times. He's good enough to give us some review games from time to time, and we're good enough to have already bought them almost every time. So we pass the savings on to you and give those games away. So thank Jamey, thank us, and thank the Lord that he's here for the Halloween episode. Jamey's going to tell us about his favorite scary games. And like he normally does, he went above and beyond the Call of Duty. I asked for like your favorite, and he gave me 3 examples. So here are Jamey's 3 examples of his favorite spooky type board games. And I'll be back right after that.
Hi, this is Jamey with Stegmaier Games, and for this year's Halloweeny episode with the Not Safe for Worker Placement podcast, I'm going to mention 3 games in brief that I think are good, scary games that I've really, really enjoyed. These are, I would say, my top 3 scary games. The first is Last Friday. Last Friday is a hidden movement game that tries to emulate the Cabin in the Woods style horror movie, where it's a one versus many game, and there's someone who is hunting most of the players. And during the course of the game, the role of hunter and hunted switches back and forth, just like it does in a horror movie, where at times the bad guy, the undead, whatever he is hunting the other players, and at other times the other players are hunting the bad guy. I really, really like this back and forth. It created a very cinematic feel in a hidden movement game. The second game is Legendary Encounters Alien. It does have a sci-fi element to it, but it's also has this really nice tension and makes it encapsulates that feeling of terror, because as new cards are added to the board, you don't see what they are until they get to a certain point. So you see all these cards slowly moving closer and closer to you, but you don't know what's on those cards yet. And most likely it's going to be an alien that's going to jump out and attack you. You just don't know how big or how bad of an alien it is. So I love that hidden aspect that you don't know what they are, but you know they're coming, and you don't know how bad they'll be once they arrive at your team's location. Really, really great game in general. Really great cooperative game. And the last one, this isn't necessarily a scary game, but it is the game that makes me distrust people in real life after I play the game, and that is the Resistance or the Resistance Avalon. While I'm playing the game, I genuinely feel distrust for the people around me, and then even after I finish playing the game, my mind is so set on not believing people or trying to get them to believe me that it's hard to switch back into real life afterward. So I think that is a real accomplishment for a game, if it really does make you feel scared of your friends and have that actually carry over into real life a little bit. So those are my 3: Last Friday, Legendary Encounters Aliens, and The Resistance. I hope you have a happy Halloween, and thank you to Ben and the Not Safe for Worker Placement podcast for letting me chime in with my thoughts.
Well, Jamey, you are welcome anytime on the show. So, he took it upon himself to just blow my premise completely out of the water by talking about 3, what are essentially, 2 of the 3 were essentially licensed games. I mean, Last Friday is not a licensed game of Friday the 13th, but it might as well be, because it's basically a Friday the 13th hidden movement game. As far as giving you different media to consume, if that floats your boat, then, if your boat floats upon Crystal Lake, watch any of the 1900 Friday the 13th movies. I'm not a huge fan of that series myself, but the game actually sounded really cool, and I was very excited when I first heard about it. And then I've heard this is the first positive thing I've heard about that game. Everyone else that I've heard of that, really was looking forward to it and already liked hidden movement games, which I do. I don't play them a lot, but I like them. I have Spectre Ops. I've had Nuns on the Run. I enjoyed both of those. Spectre Ops I really like a lot. It's simple, easy to teach new people. I also have Hunt for the Ring right now that I haven't actually gotten to the table because it's a little bit more complex, and I'm afraid to try to bring it out and teach it. So, I mean, eventually that's going to have to happen because it looks like a really cool game. But last Friday was intriguing to me. I heard a lot of bad reviews. Now that Jamey's saying that it's pretty good, maybe it's worth me trying. I mean, I've only went off other people's opinion on that. So, of course, you can watch Friday the 13th movies. I'll give you one right here. Okay, there is a book that I read recently by an author that I've been reading several of his books. And if you want something that encapsulates the 80s even better than probably Friday the 13th does, with, this is not a slasher type thing necessarily, but the book is called My Best Friend's Exorcism. It's by Grady Hendrix, and it is a really cool, nostalgic look, story about two girls in the 80s who become friends, at the roller rink when no one shows up at the other one's birthday party, and they grow up together and become best friends, and then they go out to have a little girls' night cabin, and they drop acid, and then all of a sudden one of them becomes possessed by the devil, they think, or maybe she just went crazy from the acid. So it's one of those cautionary weird tales about, everyone is so paranoid about drug use, and there's this satanic panic thing, and it's just a really, really, really cool book. And it's scattered throughout with a bunch of 80s music references and just 80s references all around. So Grady Hendrix is a really cool new author. He's worth checking out. So there you go. That is that. His second game that he talked about was Aliens Legendary Encounters. Aliens. Now, here again, I've never played any of the Legendary Encounter games because that many cards in one box gives me anxiety and diarrhea. So I have never wanted to tackle one of those games. I've heard good things about this one. Jamey at Secret Cabal really likes this one. Of all of them, the Aliens and the Predator one, might get me to try them. The Big Trouble in Little China one obviously is my favorite theme, but I've heard it wasn't good. So obviously, if you want to consume some other media of Aliens, well, there's a whole bunch of movies around there. But I'll tie that one into his next game as well for a recommendation. So his next game that he talked about was Resistance and Resistance Avalon, which I really like a lot as far as the most bare bones social deduction games. Besides Love Letter, which is sort of a social deduction game, more just of a straight up card game, but social deduction, the best thing about the Resistance is it's all about bullshitting. I mean, it's about accusing when you have no reason to, whittling these things down. It's about having fun, really. And for some people, that level, like I've played the Resistance with people where I just accuse them for no reason because I like to stir shit up. It's how I play Werewolf. It's how I play all these things. And they just can't handle it. They're just like, why are you looking at me? Why are you calling me out? Oh my God, there's the least little bit of pressure on someone. So I think the Resistance does a really good job of that. It's a little bit more gamery than Werewolf, so maybe Werewolf's a little bit more of the most pure social deduction, but I prefer the little bit of structure of Resistance myself. Well, here, I'll tie the Resistance and Aliens together with the best social deduction game there is, which is another one of those things that is not an officially licensed Alien IP product, but it's called Burke's Gambit, and it is a social deduction game that has an awesome dice mechanic. It has an infected person. It's about, Burke trying to smuggle back in an alien, I don't remember what they're called, the babies, and somebody is infected, and it's certain people work for the company trying to get the alien back to Earth, and everybody else is just trying to survive and make sure that the alien doesn't get back to Earth. It is my absolute favorite social deduction game, and it's in a small little box. It's super cheap. If you have not tried it, try Burke's Gambit. All right. That's it for Jamey. Thanks again. And, as usual, check out all things Stegmaier. He's just got so much going on with the release of The Rise of Fenris for Scythe and My Little Scythe, and just most recently Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Everything Jamey touches turns to gold, so keep up the good work, and we love having you on the show. All right, let's move right on. Why not? Let's hear a little bit from our resident jokester, Steve Spang, about his favorite spooky game, which I don't know if I kind of pushed him into this, but I said, oh, I assume you're going to say this game, and I'll be damned if he didn't. Maybe he just thought I wanted to hear about it. I know Steve is a big horror fan like me. His whole family seems to be. Now, my daughter wants to love horror. She loves all things weird, creepy, and spooky, but she also is such a little weenie that if, 5 minutes into, I tried to have her, she wanted to watch The Ring. God, The Grudge would be even worse. So I was like, oh yeah, she's 9. I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street and all these things, and Friday the 13th and shit when I was 9, so she can handle it. And Mom was out of town this other time. I think this was around this time of year last year. So I put on The Ring. Literally 5 minutes in, the first scary thing that happens, you see the first body, and like the mouth is like open, and she's just curled up in a closet. It flashes on the screen for less than a second. She's out crying, bawling. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I think Steve's kids might be a little bit more thick-skinned than mine. So anyway, I know he's a brother in horror loving. So that's horror, Steve, not horror. Okay. So anyway, let's hear Steve's favorite game.
Why did Dracula become a vegetarian? He heard a steak was gonna kill him. Speaking of Dracula, my favorite Halloween game is Fury of Dracula. Now, this game is based on the Bram Stoker novel, Dracula, and you play either Dracula himself or one of the characters from the book who's hunting Dracula. And the game is amazing fun for cat and mouse, and there's combat involved too when you run into Dracula. And you know what? Every Halloween I try to get a play of this game in because it's so great. 3rd edition's out now, and I hear they might be working on a new one in the future. Time will tell.
That sounded like a really big ghost yawn. That's no reflection of Steve's pick of Fury of Dracula 3rd edition. I've heard people say they like the 2nd edition more, but I've heard people say they like the 3rd edition. I played only the 3rd edition. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite hidden movement game. Obviously, I said that I like Spectre Ops the best of all that I've played. It's much more involved and time consuming than the others that I mentioned before. And I think that may be its downside for me. Now, I know Steve tends to like that about the game. It is fun, but it has the potential, I saw at least in the game that I played, where, Dracula has so many options to escape and to countermand the things that you're trying to do, and to subvert you, and really have you run around like a chicken with your head cut off as the hunters. Maybe that was just because Vaughn and I were stupid, but that's quite possible. But anyway, Fury of Dracula is a perennial Halloween favorite for many, and a great pick. Thank you so much, Steve, for a recommendation to stay in that Dracula vein. Like Steve said, that game is based on the Bram Stoker Dracula book. So it contains, Mina Harker and Seward and all these people, right, from the book. So if you like that book and you don't want to watch the movie with Keanu and, doing his Neo thing, which, I don't know. That movie, it's got some cool parts, but it doesn't hold up well. Let me say that. I watched it recently and I was like, damn, I used to think this was really cool. But what is pretty cool is that there is a sequel, an officially made sequel to Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's called Dracula Undead, or The Undead, excuse me. Dracula the Undead. It is written by his great-grandnephew, Dacre Stoker. along with another author called Ian Holt. It's officially sanctioned by the Stoker estate, and I read it. It's actually a really good adventure book. It continues on. I think it's like 10 years after the events of the original book. This is much more a swashbuckling adventure style. It's like if Clive Cussler wrote Dracula, but it takes on a female antagonist where they're chasing down Madame Bathory. So, she is a historical figure, Elizabeth Bathory, who people thought that she bathed in the blood of young women to try to stay young. I mean, that may be completely proven. I don't know. I've heard that's a hoax, but I've also heard that that's true. So, she is portrayed here as a straight up vampire, like more powerful than Dracula. And it's really a good romp of a book. So the fact that it's officially the sequel to Dracula is kind of a draw, and then it turned out as a really good book. So check that out if you hadn't read that. I didn't know it existed until a few years back, and I just stumbled upon it. So there you go. That's Fury of Dracula, 3rd edition, and Dracula the Undead, the sequel to the original Bram Stoker novel. All right. We'll be back right after this small musical break with artist that I'm playing all throughout our bumper music today, Rookie Erickson. This whole album, every song that I'm playing is off the album The Evil One, which is, it's one of my favorite albums to listen to at any time of the year, but this time of the year, oh my God. If you don't know anything about Rookie Erickson, look him up. He was the lead singer of the 13th Floor Elevators. And like I mentioned about the book, My Best Friend's Exorcism, it has some allusions to Syd Barrett from Pink Floyd, who did too much acid and then went crazy. Well, Rookie did a little bit of the same thing, but he didn't lose it completely, but he definitely went down a rabbit hole in the 60s and came out in the 80s with some pretty interesting stuff. And this album is just a horror, like a horror B-movie, Golden Age style tribute with some just great rock and roll music. Like some great guitar players can play one note, like say Lindsey Buckingham can play one note and it'll sound like the best solo that you've ever heard. On this album, there's the song I Walked with a Zombie. Literally, those are the lyrics. And so anyway, I'm playing Rookie Erickson, The Evil One, for all the bumper music. So we'll be back with Theo's picks right after a little bit of I Walked with a Zombie. We're back. Boy, I just dig that Rookie Erickson. God damn, that's such good stuff. All right, now as promised, we're going to get to a new contributor on the show, and I would really like to have Theo on as a guest, because if we could hook it up, he's a West Coast guy, and he mainly does videos. This is his first time doing audio, he said, so that's really cool. It's Theo the Geekygaymer Guy. That's spelled Geeky Gay as Gaymer. And I love the fact that that's his gamer tag and that he is himself and he is out there doing it and doing it big. His videos are really cool, and so you should check him out. Now, I hit him up to see, because he really is into the Gamelin Games Tiny Epic Zombies right now, and I kind of thought maybe that might be his pick, but he went with something else. So let's hear about Theo's favorite spooky Halloween style game.
Hey there, it's Theo from Geekygaymer Guy. My favorite scary game has definitely got to be Dead of Winter from Pladat Games. It's got so much theme, and I love me some zombies. It's cool that this game takes the center away from the undead and makes it about staying alive against the bitter cold. Sure, the zombies are still there, and I love that just by the roll of a die, one of your survivors can get bitten and be no more. I'm also a notoriously horrible liar, and this game has the best trader mechanic to where it's a lot easier for the trader to hide and not get caught. We need medicine? Aw, that's too bad. I don't have that in my hand. Meanwhile, I have nothing but medicine in my hand. I could gush about this game all day. Honestly, me just talking about it right now makes me want to wrangle up 4 friends to play it.
All right, thanks, Theo. All right, so Theo's pick was Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter is sort of a, I don't know, it's a divisive game in the community. It's one of the very first games. It may be the very first game I played with my game group that I've been with for about 3, going on 4 years now, I think. 417 Gamers. I showed up and I played Dead of Winter when it was the new hotness. And the very first game, the thing that everybody talks about that they don't like about it happened. Someone threw the game just because they couldn't get their win condition. Now, that was an interesting mechanic in that game. Some love it, some hate it. I don't mind either way because I feel like it is a decent cooperative game to begin with. And there's just always that element of you can't quite trust anyone. And I mean, if nobody ever did that, then it would just be like every other cooperative game. So I did enjoy it. I've had several plays of it. There's always people at the table that don't like it, is what I've found, unfortunately. I've always enjoyed my plays, but sometimes other people's bad opinion on it can kind of ruin the game for everyone. It sucks to get up from a game and, 2 of the 4 people are like, I didn't like that, even if you were having a good time. So I like Dead of Winter. I am not a huge zombie fan as a whole. Again, one of the first games I started out with was Zombicide, and I did like that, and that's a great one to introduce people to the hobby with. But, anymore, I kind of steer clear of zombie stuff just as a general rule, like some people do with Cthulhu, but I'm all in on Cthulhu. And some people are just all in on zombies or pirates or whatever their fucking thing is, So, to each their own, but I don't want to yuck anyone's yum or use that phrase because it yucks my yum when people do it. It's just a gross phrase. But anyway, but whatever you like, you like. But as far as a theme, keeping with the zombie theme, I do have a zombie board game that I really like. It's called Escape from Sunset Island, and it's really stupid. It's almost like Zombie Monopoly, but if you get a bunch of people playing it at once, it gets intense quickly. It is basically a party game where you're rolling to move and trying to escape, find a few items and escape an island. It's total stupidity, but it's actually a lot of fun. But outside of board gaming, there's a million zombie movies. Like I said, I'm not a huge zombie fan. There's one that I watched recently. I was going to say something else, and I will say this. Okay, my favorite zombie movie is Dawn of the Dead. Okay, because Ving Rhames. Full stop. George Romero's made a million zombie movies, and to me, Dawn of the Dead is the best one. Now, same year that the Dawn of the Dead came out in 2004 with Ving Rhames, there was also Shaun of the Dead with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. It's the best zombie comedy movie. So, 2004 was a good year for zombies. But the other movie that I would mention that I've recently seen that really takes the zombie genre and flips on its head is called Parents. It's got Nicolas Cage in it. And it's Nicolas Cage full tilt. I haven't seen Maniac or whatever the newest one is of his where he's apparently going buck wild, but Parents is awesome. It sort of has kind of a twist thing, so I don't even want to tell you about it. Let's just say that it's a zombie genre, but it's not your typical zombie movie in any way, shape, or form. So check out Dawn of the Dead, Shaun of the Dead, or Parents. All right, and with that, I think we're done with our contributor section. I'd like to thank everybody for doing it and everybody who responded and couldn't do it because they were in Essen or somewhere in Europe. I really appreciate it, and I love it whenever I reach out to the community and get a lot of responses. I hope you guys enjoy these people and check them out. Definitely patronize Stegmaier Games, listen to the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, the best gaming podcast in the world. And then go check out Theo's Geekygaymer Guy YouTube channel and see he's really pumps out a lot of videos. So, he usually does giveaways with them too. So that's always a cool reason to like, subscribe, and comment on someone's thing. So, again, I appreciate it a lot. Now, it might not be completely over. I think Steve might have one more for us to head out the door. Let's just see.
Hey, this is Steve from the Secret Cabal again. Did you hear about the mad scientist who bumped his head? He had no one to blame but himself.
And I think that's going to do it for episode 27 of the Not Safe for Worker Placement podcast, the second annual Halloweeny episode. Thank y'all for joining us for this abbreviated show. No Meeple of Madness Music Minute this episode, because it's basically would just be Rookie Erickson, check out The Evil One of the best albums for this time of year ever made. And no IRL, because there's plenty to talk about. Leandra and I went to a zombie crawl this last weekend, and let me tell you people, it was eventful. Legally, I'm not sure how much of it I can talk about, but she's away in Salem right now, so next episode is probably going to be heavy on personal stories and giving you too much insight into our personal lives. So, hey, and not even any of the stinky green little bastard, because Leandra she didn't necessarily take Maurice. I don't know where he's at. He's hiding possibly, but she did take with her a new invention that she came up with called Flat Maurice. If you've heard of Flat Stanley, we made a Flat Maurice for her to take on her travels, and she's such a world traveler, and his first destination point is Salem, Massachusetts. So she's taken all kinds of cool pictures with Flat Maurice. So if you want to check out our Facebook page at NSFWP Podcast, or our Twitter at NSFWP Podcast, or our Instagram, NSFWP Podcast, you can check out all those cool pictures of Flat Maurice getting around the world. And here is the real Maurice. God damn it. Here he is. All right, buddy. Well, you're the star of the show earlier on, so do what you do. All right, thanks, man. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next time with some such other things having to do with board games. See you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to episode 27 of the Not Safe for Worker Placement podcast. You can check out all of our stuff at www.nsfwppodcast.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Check us out, give us a like, and we'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on in the board game world. See you next episode. Bye.